So I want to make a video about Ferguson and the events that transpired last night. And honestly, I barely even wanted to make this video because I just shot out a few tweets last night, and the response to those, the vitriol, the hatred, the anger from fellow brothers and sisters in Christ just grieved me and angered me. But that honestly made me even want to make the video more and hopefully have a gentle, winsome spirit and tone so that we can maybe dialogue and just really, hopefully you can hear me in this video. Now, real quick, one thing I want to make clear is I'm obviously not going to be exhaustive. I'm not going to get into the case. I'm not going to get into a bunch of details. I'm not going to get into a bunch that it's not going to be exhaustive, and so please only engage with me on the stuff that I talk about in this video. If you want to do something else in the comments, I'll probably delete it or something of that nature, but please engage with the ideas that I'm talking about in this video, which is primarily the response that we should have as Jesus followers. Now, from watching Twitter and the internet last night, one thing that was very clear is that a lot of the majority of the white community sees this issue different from a lot of the majority of the black community. Now, the white community mainly, this is a generalization, so it's not everyone, but a lot of people, it seems, see it really much about at the micro level. It's all about the individual case and the facts, when the black community is so upset and there's so much unrest because they see this as just a symptom or a sign of the bigger picture and the systemic injustice that they have to suffer and kind of bear weight under living as a black person, man or woman in America. And let me make this clear too, this is an in-house discussion. This is specifically to people who call themselves disciples and followers of Jesus. You can engage if you're not that person, but I want you to know watching that if you love Jesus, this video is primarily to you. Now, the truth of the matter is last night, an entire community, millions of people felt betrayed and slighted by the grand jury's announcement. Now, again, not because the individual case, but they saw it again as a symptom. The black community, they are undervalued. They are not worth justice. They are not worth stuff of that nature. And regardless of what you believe, that is a non-negotiable as a Jesus follower, that we are to weep with those who weep. We are to hurt with those who are hurt, and we are to absorb others' grief, pain, ache, and injustice on ourselves, regardless of what we believe, simply because that's what we're called to do as disciples of Jesus. It's biblical. It says in Romans, weep with those who weep. So the question is, the black community's weeping and hurting and aching from last night's decision, and are we absorbing that? Are we stepping next to them and saying, hey, I'm here, I'm with you? And honestly, just from my perspective on Twitter, I feel like a lot of Christians' response made it worse. There was plenty of people who said, this is not about race, it was self-defense, or all these different things. And again, that might have a true nature to the sentiment, but again, are we laying down our rights and our need to be right, and are we coming alongside people who are hurting? Because honestly, saying stuff like that even makes it 10 times worse and makes people feel more unheard, more unloved, and more unwanted. Now, I don't know what perspective you're coming from or what race you are that you're watching this, but please hear this next part with a winsome and gentle spirit, knowing I'm only trying to show you why the response was so sharp and what we can do as Jesus followers in this situation. Now, regardless of what you believe, the statistics are there that being a black person in America, you are more likely to get arrested, you are more likely to get shot at, you are more likely to get murdered, you are more likely to get incarcerated, and that is the truth of the matter when they're not even the majority race in America. And so when they see something like Mike Brown happen, again, outside of the exact facts of the case, they see a bigger issue saying, hey, that could be me. So please, if you're coming from a different context, please have a humble posture, lean in and try to understand how it feels to grow up in a context where you're sometimes demeaned, dehumanized, and always seen as the monster or the bad guy. Now, I'm actually mostly Native American, but I know I look white enough to still have privileges that come with that. I mean, after last night, my wheels are already spinning trying to think about what it would be like if I have a son. He's more likely to get paid more at a job. He's more likely to actually get into a job. He's more likely to not be incarcerated. And one of the biggest ones is he's 21 times less likely to be killed by a police officer. Now think about that. That means 21 young black kids would have to get killed by a police officer before it's even likely on average that my son as a white male in America would get killed. Now please step into that, lean into that, and maybe try to understand why there's fear there and why a lot of us, we see the police as there for protecting us, which I totally do because they have never done anything to me that would be unjust and they have simply been there for my protection. But you can understand on the different side of the coin, you might not see them like that. And then how that would breed contempt, hurt, anger, pain, and a lot of things. And again, last night in Ferguson, that was simply about a grand jury bringing an indictment. That's all it was asking, is that can we take this to trial? In fact, in 2010, on the federal level, there were 162,000 cases prosecuted. And out of 162,000, only 11 were not brought into an indictment. Now think about that. If my math is correct, that's 0.006% chance that it was not brought to an indictment. Now, if you can't understand how that would make the entire black community feel undervalued and completely slighted and offended in not even saying I'm not even worth a trial, then I don't know what you're looking at. Again, the question is, are we leaning into that and saying, man, is there an injustice here? Is there hurt here? Is there pain here? Can we listen more? Can we sit at the table more? Can we ask questions more rather than always having the need to be right or argue? The internet has this ability to dehumanize, where we don't see that person as a person. We see them simply as an avatar or a profile picture. But no, that's a person with a story, with years of context and life with them. Do we listen to them? And I want to just say a few more things. Now, the first one is about the looting. For some reason, every time you engage on this context, everyone sarcastically on Twitter says back, well, oh yeah, of course, because justice is going around burning buildings and looting. No one supports that. I don't support that. I know a ton of my black brothers and sisters do not support that. And there was also a large amount of peaceful protesters in Ferguson last night. That was not the whole picture. That is not how to solve injustice. Violence with violence does not solve anything. And so I want you to hear me say that looting is not the answer. That is not okay. But I do know Martin Luther King said a riot is the voice of the unheard. I mean, what are they to resort to if they feel like the system is broken? But please know, by all means, I am not condoning that. I'm actually saying that is not the way, especially if we're Jesus followers. The way is peace. The way is love. The way is mercy. The way is grace. And the way is listening. And then secondly, let me also make very clear that I am not against cops. In fact, I love them and have friends and family who are them. One of my last roommates before I got married in a house full of a couple guys became a sheriff. He's one of the most integrity-filled men I know. The person who did my premarital counseling, mine and Alyssa's premarital counseling, was a cop as well for I think 20, 30 years. And again, some of the most gracious, loving men I know. And I'm glad, as they are disciples of Jesus, that they are in that context, bringing love and reconciliation in that place. And ultimately, I think that gets to my last point, that healing and hope is possible in Jesus. But one of the biggest injustices the Christian community has done is we have made the cross simply about a ticket to get to heaven, not realizing the cross is where all that hostility, angst, pain, hurt, and animosity actually gets put to death, and you can actually bring heaven down here to earth when you follow Jesus. I think of a verse in Ephesians 3 where it says this, "For he himself is our peace," Jesus is our peace, "who has made us both one, and who has broken down in his flesh the dividing wall of hostility by abolishing the law of commandments expressed in ordinances, that he might create in himself one new man in place of the two, so making peace, and he might reconcile us both to God in one body through the cross, thereby killing the hostility." Paul even goes on to say that the mystery of the gospel, the mystery, meaning the beauty, the real center of it, is actually that everyone is welcome. Everyone is even and equal at the foot of the cross. And the truth of the matter, Paul said right there, is that the gospel is creating a new humanity. Meaning it's not about actually being color blind. I really don't actually like when people say that, but it's actually, rather than seeing different ethnicities and races as enemies, it's actually about bringing it into the new humanity and celebrating everyone's differences. In Revelation, it says we're going to be before the throne, all nations, tribes, and tongues. It doesn't say we're all flattened and made the same color. No. God created us how we are to be celebrated. There's beauty there. There's amazing grace there. And so, new humanity is being created with Jesus at the center. And this humanity operates on love, it operates on peace, it operates on a beauty of the cross and the resurrection. And so the world might see a white police officer and a black young male as enemies, but what would it look like if in the church we made them family? What if you walked into a church and you saw a white police officer and a young black male talking, worshiping Jesus together? That's what the new humanity looks like, and that's actually what turned the world upside down in the first century. And I think one of the reasons our Christianity is having no impact is because we're making it a ticket to heaven rather than saying, no, reconciliation, justice, and restoration is here right now at the feet of Jesus.